Jeepers! You're listening to Smash or Pass.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another interview on the JayBee and Milly channel. I am JayBee and joining me is Milly.
Hi.
And the special guest who will be interviewing today is Mae Harrington O'Neill. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much for having me.
So it's an honor to have you here. This is quite a different style for us. So in terms of connection to Scooby Doo, I suppose you've not worked on any of the shows that we know, but you've played a very significant role in the breaking news of, Scooby Doo and the Haunted High Rise or the Hex Girls stuff. So it's absolutely incredible to have you here today. So I kind of want to build up a little bit of a story about your career and everything. And so my first question is, on Looper, your article, your kind of profile highlights your studies in, I think it's communication science, which is very interesting. So how did this kind of come about?
Yeah, so I actually wanted to go to college for film and television. I've always wanted to be a writer, but I decided I wanted to go to Emerson College, which is like a great school in Boston. My dad went to school in Boston, so I was like, I really wanted that connection. And a lot of colleges, their film and television program and their communications program are like the same thing, not at Emerson. So I didn't know that until I got there, and I realized I was like in a totally different major than what I thought I was going to be in. But it actually kind of worked out because communication studies is a lot of writing, and I kind of just fell in love with that major and never left. And then after college, I started working in like film and television. I moved to New York for a while, and I worked on The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel season 4 in the costume department, which was a really wonderful experience. And that led me to like being a PA on like all these different movies and shows. And people always ask you in the film industry, like when you're a PA, like kind of when you're up and coming, they're like, what do you want to do? what are your career goals? And I said to everyone who would listen, I said, I want to be a writer. I want to be a screenwriter, but I also like ultimately would love to be a novelist. And I remember this one, he was on the AD team, assistant director team. And he said, well, if you want to be a writer, then why are you here? You should be writing. And I looked and I was like, oh my gosh, he's right. And on that film set, I started applying to all these different writing jobs, and Looper is the one who got back to me.
Oh wow, that sounds like such an incredible story. And I know it does say that you did like, study and practice it in a variety of different writing styles. So like you were saying with the aspirations of screenwriting, novelist, I guess were they the kind of two primary goals that you had? Did you kind of, I don't know, did you start college with something kind of clear in your mind of this is the type of writing I want to do, or kind of, I guess, the ambition of knowing what the end point was in your mind at that point?
Definitely not. I, for years and years, wanted to be a screenwriter. But the format of screenwriting and then the format that comes naturally to me, like I found that they just like weren't matching up, because I love writing like prose, like out in story format, like as if you're reading a novel or a short story. And of course you can translate that to screenwriting, but I'm just like not very good at it, to be honest. I could probably practice and get better. Practice makes perfect, but I just kind of fell into this. I studied abroad in school. I took a summer and I went to Amsterdam and I studied, and it was a writing course, and it was just like, it made me realize that was okay, that I wasn't really good at script writing. And this is just kind of what I love, but it definitely wasn't natural to me at all.
I mean, it is incredible. I mean, I did read through quite a lot of the articles in preparation for this, and your
Thank
writing
you.
style it's actually really good. I've kind of enjoyed a lot of what I've read, and in terms of like to get to that point, I always think about like what my dreams are, what my career aspirations are, And there's always kind of pillars that I'd use as an example. So, for instance, if I'm in a writing mood, I kind of look at writers that have had a similar journey to me, and I kind of think, okay, so if they're in this position, then surely I can kind of do it too if I work hard enough. So, in terms of you before writing and before all the things that you've done, have there been any like writers or maybe even journalists that you looked up to?
Yes, for sure. First of all, thank you so much for reading some of my work. I feel like I send stuff to my friends and like I never hear back from them. So like thank you so much for taking the time. For sure. I would have to say my biggest inspiration is probably David Sedaris. He is like a memoirist and he writes humor. And even though I really love fiction writing and like I want to write fiction, something that I did in school was that I want to be a writer so bad. And I don't care what kind of writing I'm doing as long as people are paying me and as long as I'm improving in my craft. And so that's why I studied so many different formats, is because I wanted to be able to do any kind of writing that was asked of me in like any sort of setting, whether I was like working in a more traditional office space or if I was working on like a political campaign or if I was doing the kind of online writing that I'm doing now. And David Sedaris writes nonfiction. And I think nonfiction, like getting a clear sense of your own voice, I think is a great way to then alter your voice for different situations. And I wanted to have like a very clear idea of what my voice sounds like so that I could kind of, you know, make it more fluid for different pieces that I was working on. And I think David Sedaris does that really well. I was lucky enough this past spring to go to a reading and meet him, and it was fabulous. He was so nice.
That is incredible. I mean, it's always nice to hear stories like that because there's always that kind of like cliche phrase of never meet your heroes, but in some cases, like it really does pay off. And doing this show, it always baffles me kind of how nice a lot of people tend to be. But something that I could absolutely relate to is from your profile, it says that you're an avid consumer of both movies and television. And it's just so incredible because there's so many movies coming out now. But do you have like a top 5 movies of all time that kind of like career defining, life defining movies?
Yes, some of them are going to be embarrassing. Let's see. But okay. So, let's see. This is like so weird, but I love the movie Laura, which is like a film noir like back in the 40s movie. I got in high school like really into film noir, like kind of that older style of like storytelling, and my dad went out and bought like all these fabulous film noir movies like The Maltese Falcon and Double Indemnity, and we watched them all together. So Laura is like a great kind of like whodunit, what's going on. And then another movie that I really love is Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I would say honestly was pretty career defining for me, just because I love movies that toe the line between two different genres. And I guess that kind of fits in with the film noir thing, right? Is because it is like a detective whodunit. But then at the same time, it's like this very silly comedy with like cartoons running around. And I love movies that can kind of do both of those things. Which I guess leads into my third one, which is Enchanted. Yeah. I'm a huge Amy Adams fan. Like, she's one of my favorite actresses right now working in film and television. And that movie, I think, is like a really fabulous like pastiche. I think it really just honors all the wonderful Disney movies that have been made over the years. There are literally so many little kind of details that point to different Disney movies. You should not watch that movie with me. I'm terrible to watch with that movie with.
I really can relate.
Yeah, you know it kind of, you know the script better than the actors did, I think, at the time. Like, you know it word for word.
You just sat there and like, that's how you know.
I'm never gonna forget coming in from work when you told me that Disney Plus were doing a second Enchanted movie.
We're gonna watch that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I actually I got to see that early for work. I got a screener. And I went through with a fine-tooth comb and I looked and I found every single like tiny little detail, Disney detail in that movie. I wrote an article about that too. Let's see. If I was gonna have to pick, I love rom-coms, honestly.
Me too.
And I think if I was going to have to pick a favorite rom-com, I think I'm going to have to say 27 Dresses.
Yes.
Another James Marsden movie. I don't know. I just love that movie kind of like embraces femininity, and like that movie is really about someone who's just such a good friend that they've like run themselves dry and like don't think about themselves anymore. And I can relate to that. And honestly, like rom-coms just like make me feel good. So I know even though they're like a little silly, it's not super serious. Like I always feel great at when the credits start rolling, you know? And then number 5, my gosh. You know what? I recently read Stardust by Neil Gaiman, and I love that movie. That's a fabulous book to movie adaptation. And I thought that movie was perfectly cast. Love that movie. So I guess those are top 5. Those are pretty career defining for me. I love books and movie adaptations. One of my favorite authors actually is Gillian Flynn. I don't know who did Gone Girl and Sharp Objects. But those, like, that's a whole other can of worms.
Yeah, I think I love kind of like book to movie adaptations, but I think if I love the book, I can be far too critical.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Things like Harry Potter, Hunger Games.
Yeah.
I think I almost prefer doing it in reverse, where I see the movie and then read the book, because I almost realize that I like the book more. So it's kind of like, oh, I love the movie and this is even better, because I often favor the book. So I often kind of approach those things in reverse, admittedly.
That's a good way to do it.
It is interesting, and definitely when you can kind of build a picture in your head. And I guess it's interesting to think about the different types of mediums, because there's so many instances where I love a book and then they turn it into a movie, and it's pretty good. Like I had that kind of same thing like with when they did the Northern Lights, they turned it into the Golden Compass. I kind of didn't hate the movie at all, even though it was kind of crucified by critics.
Are we talking Nicole Kidman, the Nicole Kidman?
Yeah, that version.
I didn't hate that movie either. I liked it. Some people really hate on that movie, but I enjoyed that movie.
But I do think it was kind of, I think structurally, I do think it lended itself very well to a TV show. And to that end, are there any, like, I guess the same question as before, like top 5 defining movies, but for TV shows?
Okay, this one is a lot easier for me, because my love of television is genuinely what started me down this path. So my number one answer has to be Castle, starring Nathan Fillion and Stana Katic. That show used to be on after The Bachelor on ABC, and my mom and I, when I was a kid, we used to like eat The Bachelor up, right? and murder mystery shows honestly used to scare me a lot. Like I would get really bad nightmares as a kid, and Castle was a show that I got to like watch the sort of like, oh my God, who's the killer? What's going on? But it's a comedy really at heart. And so I was able to watch it and like not have nightmares. And I loved that. And I used to like collect all the posters, like, cause they would have like new season posters come out every year. And I would like look up all the spoilers. I wrote lots of fan fiction. And so that definitely has to be number 1. And then number 2, little embarrassing again, is probably Once Upon a Time. I loved that show when it was on. I think fairy tales are just like a wonderful way to kind of learn about story structure, because I feel like if you read a lot of fairy tales, a lot of the same stuff happens in all of them, but they're still interesting and they're still like a little different. And I think that a lot of themes and tropes that we have in modern movies and television come from fairy tales. And so that show was really interesting for me to watch, just because I love those tropes, and I love learning about those themes, and kind of seeing them differently was cool. And then number three, I'm going to have to say a little more new, is Ted Lasso. Oh my gosh, I'm obsessed with Ted Lasso right now. I went to London this summer, and I got off the plane at Heathrow. This is not a joke. I got off the plane, I got on the tube, and I went to the Prince's Head in Richmond, where they film like the scenes at the Crown and Anchor. I just went straight there. I didn't check into my hotel, didn't drop off my luggage. I just went straight there for a pint, and it was awesome. London was amazing. And then number 4, let me think. What else Honestly, I'm going to say Sharp Objects. I know I just mentioned that with Gillian Flynn, but that, I think that book is a very interesting, unique book. And I think they did a fabulous job adapting it. Because it, like, I think is so hard with the plot of that book and the nature of the content and the subject matter. And they did a fabulous job. Once again, Amy Adams, fabulous. And then number 5, oh my goodness, Grey's Anatomy.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm going to have to say that one. That was the first show I watched when I was a kid, where I was like, where the romance just like was palpable and the chemistry of the actors, like, I think this just came off the screen. And I love a good romance. Like, I think good romances kind of like really pull me into the plot sometimes. And I just love that show. I don't really watch it anymore, but I have to report on it a lot. So I still know what's happening, even though I don't watch it anymore. So yeah, that'll have to be top 5.
I think that's all really refreshing, because there's such a variety there, like you say, from the romance to comedy to also a lot of like whodunit as well. So it's such a nice range. And clearly, like you say, a lot of those were quite impactful and clearly, you know, really memorable from throughout childhood and your life. And I think to then go on to some of the work that you did after watching those, you know, in industry, you know, in industries and in for companies like Netflix and Apple TV, Amazon Prime, are all listed as places where you'd been a production assistant. So I imagine, you know, just kind of that trajectory and that progression into those careers was really quite, you know, memorable. And I know you said that, you know, it was while working there that you got the job with Looper, but do you have any kind of memories or moments from when you were working with those streaming services that really stand out to you?
Oh, totally. I like, from the time I was a kid, like obsessed with Castle, I wanted to work in movies and in television particularly, because I think movies are fabulous, love a movie, but TV shows, I think, are an incredible opportunity to really show like progression of a character and really show that development. And I don't think not every show does it well, but then shows that do it well, you're like, oh my God, this is incredible. I'm going to be thinking about this in the nursing home, you know? And I really loved working on Maisel. That was a really interesting time, just because I have to give Gilmore Girls another shout out as a favorite TV show. I'm a huge fan of Amy Sherman Palladino's writing. I mean, to write as much as she does, I think is so impressive, like in a single script. And that was so wonderful to get to work on that show. And I remember when I first got there, because I was working in the costume department in a risk management capacity because COVID had just hit. And this was the first season they were producing with COVID happening. So there was all kinds of safety measures in place to make sure everybody was staying safe and healthy. And nobody really wanted me there, I'll be honest. Like that was pretty palpable, because the costume department is a department where you have to work very close in contact. You're like fitting things on people's bodies and you're like looking at things. Does this look good? Does that look good? And nobody wanted me monitoring that. And it was kind of hard, because it's like you're working 12 hours a day. You're not seeing the daylight really. And you're working around a bunch of people who don't want you there. So honestly, I just tried to come to work every single day with a smile on my face. And actually at the time I was writing for a different company, and I would be writing at my desk while I was doing my second job. So it was just like very chaotic. But again, I just like wanted to keep improving my writing, and very, very slowly, you know, I kind of started to earn people's respect and their kindness. And that was really wonderful. And ultimately, by the end of the season, they let me appear in the season finale. I'm in the season 4 finale. Like, I got my own costume fitting, and it was so funny. Normally they make people take out their piercings because it's a period show and people did not have like these piercings back in the day, but they wigged me because I work on the show, and they were like, we're not going to make her take out her piercings. And it was an incredible experience. Amy Sherman Palladino was like directing the episode. Like I got to be on set with her and like watch her interact with all the actors and the crew, and that was incredible. So I guess I'm gonna have to say that one.
Oh, wow, that does sound amazing.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. I couldn't imagine what it's like to be in those scenarios. I mean, I know that we've kind of had a bit of a taste doing this show on what that's like in terms of like, we've mentioned meeting your heroes. So one that comes to my mind personally is just a couple of weeks ago, we interviewed Billy West, who was the voice of Shaggy in Zombie Island, which is like one of
Oh
the
my
holy
gosh.
grails
Well,
of Scooby Doo.
I know.
Oh,
I
wow.
know. I love that movie. Please continue.
No, I love that so much, and that's quite fitting actually, because I think it's like the 25th anniversary of that movie this year.
Oh wow,
So,
really? That's awesome.
but just the second he entered the Zoom and you could identify his voice, I just couldn't believe what was happening. Like I've never, well, I can think of maybe only a few other times that I've been so nervous in my entire life. But going through your experiences, looking through your Looper profile, it highlights that you've interacted with and worked with some absolute legends such as Martin Scorsese. So I kind of want to ask, has there ever been a moment where you've encountered someone, within the movie industry or anything like that, and you've just been like utterly starstruck?
For sure. So the first time I met Rachel Brosnahan, I was like totally starstruck. After the first time, I was like, okay, she was around all the time. But she's stunning in real life, like literally one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen, and so talented. So I remember the first time I met her, I was like, had no idea what to say, and she was being really sweet and like joking around with me, but I just like could barely open my mouth. But another one that happened on Maisel was, I didn't mention this and I should have, but Galaxy Quest is another one of my favorite movies. And I met Tony Shalhoub one day, and I remember I was just like so nervous, and he's like a big deal, and I just was like, I just have to tell you, Mr. Shalhoub, the Galaxy Quest is one of my favorite movies of all time. And it's one of the reasons I'm working here. And he thought that was really sweet, but I definitely nerded out a little in front of Tony Shalhoub.
That's actually incredible. And of course, like it's almost a situation where there's so many people, almost too many really, that you can think of who may have inspired you or you've looked up to. Like I hate calling it this, but I have like two whole notebooks, which is essentially like a hit list of people that I want to try and like contact to interview. So I kind of want to get a grasp of you personally. Like what is your, hit list in terms of, maybe celebrities or filmmakers that you haven't had a chance to work with yet, but you'd hope to in the future?
Oh my gosh. Totally. So I hold immense respect for actors. My parents were both actors growing up, actually, which is, I guess, like why I was so inundated with like movies and television and plays and musicals and all that kind of stuff. And so my mom, like some of my favorite memories from childhood were like watching her from the wings of a stage. It's very like Billy Lord, Carrie Fisher situation. But I would absolutely love, I know I mentioned I'm obsessed with Ted Lasso. I would love to work with Hannah Waddingham. I think she is such an incredible actress. She totally deserved that Emmy she won on season 1 for about a million different reasons. I would love to work with her. Another one is Lana Parrilla, who played Regina Mills / the Evil Queen on Once Upon a Time. I think she carried that show for a long time. I'm sure her back hurts a lot. But I would love to work with her. And oh gosh, a lot of my favorite actors. Let's think. Stanley Tucci. Oh my gosh, I love Stanley Tucci. I feel like I'm just like watching any movie and you turn around and Stanley Tucci's there and it makes it like 10 times better. Oh my gosh, Amy Adams for sure. I love her because I think all of her projects are so like interesting and unique. To me, it feels like she really puts thought into what she's picking, and I think that's really fascinating. Let's see. Who else? Oof. I'm not sure, honestly. Maybe Chris Evans, because I'm really obsessed with Captain America. That would be super fun. Michelle Pfeiffer, I think would be super cool to work with. There are honestly so many. We'd have to do a whole separate interview just about that one.
No, there really is so many. And like JB said, for his list, it takes 2 books to kind of keep track of.
Funnily enough,
I should make one of those myself.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
It's so weird. I've got 2 books, but funnily enough, the one time that someone asked us like who we'd want to speak to, my mind just froze and I couldn't think of more than 3. So it was like, oh, I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah.
Because you're on the spot, like that's what a lot of this is for you today. We're putting you on the spot and you're having to like think of things quickly. But like we've been saying, honestly, you've had just such a really interesting career. I mean, it's been so interesting to find out about all the things you've done, and of course, kind of continuing on with that in 2020 was we've covered all the kind of streaming services, but then after that, you went on to be an entertainment news writer. So, what do you remember about making that transition, and I guess what it was like, really?
Sure. Well, after I graduated from Emerson, I moved out to Los Angeles with the hopes of becoming a staff writer on a television show. And it was funny. Like, I applied to so many jobs when I was out there, and like I could not find work. I couldn't even get a waitressing job. And I'm a pretty pragmatic person. So I was like, I'm not going to go broke out here looking for a job that's never going to come. And even though at the time when I was there, I was like spending all my time applying for different jobs, I don't even know. I could not tell you how many resumes I sent out and how many job applications. Like, it was nuts. And then I drove back to New York, and in my, crappy Chevy Cobalt. And I was there for a couple of weeks. And then I got a message from someone at Netflix Life. And they were like, we got your resume. We're looking for writers. Do you want a job with us? And so I just like jumped at the chance because I was like, this is what I want. And after college, because I went to Emerson. Emerson's a very creative school. So everybody's getting these creative degrees. So right out of the gate, out of college, not everyone was working in their desired field just because of that. And I was like, if I can do even 5 hours of work per week in my field, I'm going to do it. And that was the job that I still had when I was on Maisel. And I eventually had to leave that job because I got moved to a different position on Maisel. But the things that I learned there have definitely helped me, and at Looper too, and just in my writing career in general. But yeah, that was a lot different than Looper, that job, just because it was more press release format, I guess. But also, on the other hand, when I worked for Netflix Life, I got to put my opinions into things. Like at Looper, I'm allowed to, I guess, kind of hint with my wording at my opinion, or like kind of seem like I'm swaying one way or the other, but I'm not allowed to use like pronouns. I'm not allowed to use I, like put my own opinion into things. Whereas at Netflix Life, I could, which was interesting because, like, do you guys know the Enola Holmes movies that are coming out on Netflix right now with Millie Bobby Brown and Henry Cavill? That's based on a book series that I read growing up. So when those movies were coming out, the first movie came out, I was working for Netflix Life. And I had to write an article about, are these movies appropriate for young children? Because parents want to know that information sometimes. And I got to say in that article, I've read these books. I can say for sure that they're appropriate for like these ages. But that's not something that happens at every outlet.
See, I like that. And I do kind of notice almost like that kind of backhanded, like that kind of backdoor into giving your opinions about stuff. And like instantly what is like just the article for the Haunted Highway stuff, like there was another cancelled Scooby Doo movie, and yet Velma lives on, and it's like, oh yeah, okay. Yeah.
My thoughts exactly.
I know. I was actually so blown away and really disappointed when I listened to that interview you guys did with Carolyn Gare, just because the Hex Girls are so cool. Like anytime they appear, like when their first appearance, I believe you probably know better, was in Scooby Doo and The Witch's Ghost, which is like a fabulous movie. And their songs are actually really good. Like I would listen to them honestly if they were real, like a real band. And I was so disappointed that they were like cutting that movie with new songs in it. I thought that was so depressing.
Yeah, it is a shame, and this the love for them just goes so strong. We interviewed, I guess, the dad of the Hex Girls, Rick Cobb, quite a while ago now, and it's kind of a shame from his point of view because they were his idea, his characters, and yet he kind of passed over all the rights to them when he did that Witch's Ghost movie, which kind of seems like industry standard, but one of the shows that I really love is Doctor Who, and there it's completely different. So I think there was an article recently that they couldn't use one of the characters because the writer of their debut episode didn't give them the rights to use them. And so it's kind of like you see it from both ends, but the Hex Girls are amazing. And of course, the article that you wrote was so recent. And I guess comparing, the now to the then, do you recall your first article for Looper? And if so, how did going into that process compare with, writing the Haunted High-Rise article, or say an article that is very recent?
For sure. I remember my first article at Looper because it was like I was like so stressed. So the first article I did was kind of as like a test, right? For them to see if I could even do what I said I could do. And it was about Gossip Girl, I believe. I believe the first article I ever wrote was called like the Chuck Bass storyline that disappears from Gossip Girl without an explanation. And then the second one, I wrote them in the same day. It was about The Power of the Dog, which was the Benedict Cumberbatch movie that came out on Netflix last year. And, that was stressful at the time just because I knew I was being tested. I knew I was being watched. And every company I've worked for has a different format. They have, different guidelines they want me to follow. And I was being timed. So it was like, I have to get this done and it has to be readable and it has to sound okay enough so that they see that like I can work under pressure, because that's what it is. They want to see like, can you work under pressure? But I guess once you're used to that, the process for writing that article about Velma and the haunted high-rise, that makes it sound like that's the name of the movie. Scooby Doo and the haunted high-rise and Velma, that article. I picked that to write mostly because I love Scooby Doo, and the social media that I use the most is Tumblr. I know that's a little lame, but everyone on Tumblr was like freaking out over the Velma stuff. I was reading like all this information and I was like, what? Like, what's going on with that show? The dog's not there. That was bizarre. And I've been working there. My 1-year anniversary is actually on March 7th. So for that article, I have now gotten to a place, I think, where I can work pretty well under pressure. And I know that not to think too hard about things. I think that's my biggest like flaw at work, is that sometimes I think so hard and I'm like, I want the reader to like this. I want it to be good. That I like sit there and I can't think of anything to say because nothing is good enough. Like I think with that article, and I just have to accept the things you're saying are good and they're relevant, and like you just have to get the information in one way or the other.
Yeah, certainly. And so like you were saying, obviously, it's coming up to a year, and how do you approach when you're gonna write an article? Is it that typically speaking, you have a topic that you either have to research or something to go and watch, or is it just quite often, you've got to kind of do a certain amount of articles and it's the ideas that come to you directly? I get assigned topics, or I get to choose topics, and I always just try to figure out what angle I'm coming from. Looper, we really want people to, when they're reading the article, feel that a fan wrote it. Like if you're a super big fan of The Last of Us, when you read the piece, like we want you to feel like you're reading something that a fan is writing. And so I think that
whenever I'm writing, and you know, I haven't seen every TV show that's like airing right now. I've seen a lot of them, and I really try to keep up with stuff that's currently airing and things that have just like been popular across the board. But I haven't seen everything, you know? So normally I try to figure out if I'm writing something about a show or a movie that I've never seen before. I try to look up what are fans saying online. That's like the number one thing. I think it's funny, like when I was a kid and I was like on Tumblr or whatever, and I was like typing stuff out about my favorite TV show, I was like, no one's ever going to look at this. And it's like, we are looking. So the writers of that show might not be looking, but we're looking. And I just try to figure out, I guess, what would interest people and what's going on the show right now, you know, because not everything is airing. Some things are on hiatus. What was the last big thing that happened on the show? Was there a big cliffhanger on the season finale? Like trying to figure out, I guess, where that show is at and where the fandom is at is where I try to look at first.
No, that's really interesting. A really good insight. I guess, like I say, it's often, you know, a lot of people might think, you know, it's just as simple as you've seen something and then you can write it, and it's almost just like a regurgitation of what happens, as opposed to, like you say, actually finding out what angles, what insights, what other people think, and being able to include kind of a broader image of things. And so I guess a topic that kind of we're moving forwards and we're quite interested to talk about is, of course, Scooby, which we've seen the VHS. We know that you used to like this growing up, from the fact that you like a lot of like whodunit things, that kind of thing. I'm sure kind of the mystery element might be a big kind of motive as to why. So I guess kind of before the first interaction we had with you, which was of course that article where where you know you were covering the interview that we did, how familiar were you with the Scooby franchise?
All right, I'd say definitely not as familiar as you guys, because I looked through your YouTube and like some of your videos, like you guys go so in depth. I guess I grew up watching Scooby Doo Where Are You, which, like, you know, the first show that started in 69, which I love, you know, that like just set the foundation. And I love What's New Scooby Doo, and I love like a lot of the movies, but I haven't really seen like a pup named Scooby Doo. Haven't ever seen that. What was the one where they were all like young and there was Red Herring? I'll never forget that dude.
That actually is a pup named Scooby Doo.
Oh, it is? Oh my gosh. Well then, what's the other one? There's like a couple ones that are more recent, I know.
That's
Be Cool, Mystery Incorporated.
Guess Who?
Yeah. Oh, I've seen Mystery Incorporated. I'm actually working through that right now. I'm on season 2 because I watched the first season and a half when it was on Netflix like 5 years ago or something, and then it moved off Netflix. But now I have HBO Max, so now I'm finally getting to see what happens at the end. I think that's one of the best animated shows like of the past decade. Like seriously, I love that show.
Yeah, I think certainly like something that's particularly refreshing about that one, it's the only Scooby show where it actually has like a continuous plot through it. Like you were saying, to see what actually happens at the end of the series. Before, you'd never know it was the end of a series or which episode came in which order. Whereas with that, it was something, like you say, you wanted to stick with and kind of find out what did happen at the end.
Yeah. And gosh, they made Fred so funny in that show. How he's just like so obsessed with traps. Like me and my boyfriend like laugh out loud at his lines.
Yeah, there's so many like just little subtle details with Fred and Mystery Incorporated as well. Like, God, just even stuff that you'd never think that Scooby Doo would go there. Like when, and I do think this is early on, but when like Daphne finds like traps illustrated in Fred's room, and it's like I read it for the articles, and it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, exactly.
And I love that because it's very evident that, you know, through working through the show, you've got quite a liking to the franchise, which is just so refreshing to hear. And you did mention that overall that was your driving force behind, I guess, bringing all the haunted high-rise stuff to life. But about that passion for the franchise, are there any titles or even moments from Scooby that you remember either through rewatching it or watching it, you know, when you were younger, like that stand out to you as being particularly memorable to you?
Oh, for sure. Well, Scooby Doo on Zombie Island, used to scare the living daylights out of me. Oh my gosh. I will like never forget. I wouldn't watch that movie for years because like there's that one part where it's like, the zombies are real. And like oh my God, terrified. So definitely that one. Also another one that I have, which I haven't seen in such a long time, but I think is like so random, is Scooby Doo meets the Harlem Globetrotters. I remember that one being like so random. And then I have this one, Scooby Doo Alien Invasion.
Oh, I love that. Millie doesn't like that one, so I always try. Every time I want to put it on, I'm like, please.
I don't not
please.
like it. It's just I'd never seen it. And can I just say, you have like an amazing collection of VHSs. I don't think I've ever seen the Harlem Globetrotters one on VHS before.
Well, can I say actually, I had like an even bigger collection growing up. My mom, after I like went away to college, she like threw all my VHSs out, and I was devastated. And my boyfriend, God bless him, went on eBay and found these VHSs for me because I was like so depressed that they'd all been thrown out. So I got some of the ones that I had as a kid, but then a bunch that I'd like never had. Like, have you guys ever seen Scooby Doo and the Ghoul School?
Oh wow.
Yeah, I love Ghoul School.
Yeah, I was like, this one's so random because they're only the two of them are there. I think that's really interesting too, how there's like media with like these side adventures of just like a couple of the characters.
And Scrappy as well was in a few of those earlier ones.
Yeah,
and Daphne was a part of a few of them, but Velma and Fred weren't there.
Yeah, who knows where they were? They were off. They were busy. Yeah, but also, oh, hold on. You know what is like so random is there's a Scooby Doo episode, What's New Scooby Doo, the one with the dinosaur. There's like an episode about how like a dinosaur model at a museum comes to life and is like wreaking havoc on this exhibit. And there's kind of like an Indiana Jones figure that's like a little suspicious, and like there's a museum curator. We don't know what he's up to. I just love Scooby Doo, man, honestly. I think that it's so interesting that not many franchises like have this longevity, and I think that that's seriously so fascinating to look at, is like these characters fit into every generation, like every time period. I think that's something that I think is really interesting. Have you guys ever seen, I'm sure you have, Scooby Doo and the Cyber Chase, which is definitely one of my absolute favorites. And like the whole point of that is that they're going through the video game, and you know, they're on the moon, and then they're in the jungle, and like there's dinosaurs, and then they're in the Coliseum, and they fit into all these different places. Like I think that's what that movie shows. And I just think that's so fascinating because like they've been around since 1969, you know?
It's incredible. And the way it's applicable now, even though it didn't really know it. So the idea of going into a video game is the type of thing that I would fantasize about playing on Pokemon Emerald on the Game Boy for the first time. And nowadays, when you've got augmented reality, virtual reality, it's kind of like, oh gosh, we are actually almost here at that point. So that's just terrifying. And I guess to put you on the spot once more with that Scooby stuff, was there a favorite member of Mystery Inc. that you had at all?
Oh, sure. I'm gonna have to say Daphne. It was so funny. Senior year of high school, me and a couple friends, we did a group costume, and we won best group costume because we dressed up like the Scooby-Doo characters. I was Daphne, and then we had a kid dress up like the Creeper, and we actually had him, like at lunchtime, we ran through the halls of the high school with him chasing us so people would see us and they'd vote for our costume. And we were like, Jeepers, it's the Creeper. Like so nerdy. But Daphne, I am obsessed with Sarah Michelle Gellar's portrayal of her in the live action movies, and I think that's such a fun take on the character because in the older cartoons she is danger prone Daphne. She gets kidnapped all the time. She's always like falling down the slide, and she's like, you know, guys, I'm down here, the monsters got me. And I think it's like so funny how in that movie she says that to them and she's like, I don't want to be this anymore, and then the next time you see her, she's like a black belt in karate. And it's like, who's the damsel now? You know, I love that. And I think that they kind of added that into her character since then. I think that she is a lot less that danger prone character. And I guess I love that evolution.
Yeah, I think it was certainly founded that. And I feel like I kind of need to move out of the way because to kind of show, because JayBee's like kind of prized collectible.
Oh, I was just gonna mention that. Like, if I was doing this alone, it would be like,
yeah, if JayBee's got kind of a floor to ceiling length poster that used to be outside like movie theaters and things when that movie was released, and it is Sarah Michelle Gellar as Daphne.
Oh
and
my
it's
God,
just on the wall over there, so it's like starting to move out of the way. But we'll have to show you at the end.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I was actually just gonna mention that. You were in my mind actually. That's a bit scary. But yeah, all those adaptations are absolutely fantastic, and I guess a bit of a different question now, and this is something that I kind of only just thought of. Like, now, of course, with the article being released, I mean, we released that initial interview in, I think it was the start of October. It was when we were doing the rounds with Trick or Treat Scooby Doo. We dedicated the whole of October to that, because it was release month. And so we interviewed everyone from that movie. Well, not everyone from the movie, but people from the movie every week. And so it only got picked up. It kind of went trending, and then it kind of got picked up more recently than October. But in terms of that story, now, of course, Warner Bros. Are going through quite a lot of criticism with all their cancellations and stuff.
Yeah.
So is there any trepidation from your point of view, thinking, okay, if no one writes about this, it will just go unknown forever? Was any part of you a bit like maybe someone at Warner Brothers would take an issue with like media outlets causing spotlight to it at all?
I think it's always good to report on things, mostly for the fans of the franchise. I guess when I'm writing for fans, because those are the people with most of the passion, I would say. I know that the people working on the project are very talented, wonderful people, but that sometimes I feel like for some people, it's just a job. I think that's what I saw a lot of working in the film industry, seeing producers and like these big wigs making a lot of money and like not doing a whole lot and not having as much passion for the project is like the PA who's getting everybody coffee, I guess. So my hope writing that article was that Scooby-Doo fans would see it and know that there's material locked in a box somewhere that we could have, and they're just not giving it to us, and they're not putting in, that effort and that funding, which is instead going to Velma. And I was writing to let the fans know, because I want people to know that like there is this content that we could be really enjoying, and they've just like put it on a shelf for who knows how long.
That is such a great answer, and I just want to like personally thank you for that, because like we can do what we can do. We can shoot off like all this stuff, and like I say, sometimes it just goes to the void. And so when it comes to situations like this, we need talented writers like you that work at these reputable places to be able to like bring it out to the masses. So thank you so much for that. And like, I don't know if you've seen like the comment section on things, but all of that coverage has led to a lot of people coming out in support of the article and the Hex Girls, and it's kind of united a lot of people in terms of people that already love the franchise and nostalgia. So what's kind of your response to the positivity that an article that may possibly be, it may have been like the first one out of 3 that you wrote that day or something, like how does it feel to know that an article that you can write has such a positive impact on quite a lot of people?
Honestly, I think that's really wonderful, and I don't really get a lot of that normally. I mean, because we don't have a comments section on Looper. And so you guys literally, I've worked there a year. You're the first people who've ever reached out to me and said something to me. Okay. And I thought that was like so kind of you. And if other people enjoyed it and, got something out of it, I mean, that's all I really want. That's like, I guess, my goal. I became a writer because, I was like a lonely kid, only child, and like watching TV, reading books, watching movies, like it like helped me a lot, and it made me feel a lot less alone. So that's my goal always with my writing, no matter if I'm writing about like Scooby Doo or if I'm writing about Blue Bloods or Grey's Anatomy or like anything. So I guess my response is thank you for just taking a look and for taking a chance on my work.
Well, it is incredible, and you've definitely accomplished so much of that already. It's kind of interesting to think about where things are gonna go from here, because when people think about the future, it's easy to kind of think about like apocalypse, negativity. What if this goes wrong? What
Yes.
if that goes wrong? But I guess in typical Hanna-Barbera fashion, me being a fan of the Jetsons growing up, it's always like, okay, the future is actually going to be pretty cool potentially. So on the future. Is
Yeah.
there any movies or shows on the horizons that you're aware of that you're really looking forward to covering, be it in articles or just watching it from a point of view where you may not necessarily write about it?
For sure. I am excited / terrified for season 3 of Ted Lasso, mostly because I love it so much. I'm worried that I'm not going to be able to be unbiased when I write about it. So I'm really looking forward to just consuming that as a fan, because I feel like I have to know what's going on so many different shows all at the same time that I don't get to enjoy things as a fan much anymore. So I cannot wait for that. You know, Disney's been making a lot of these live action, you know, remakes. How do you guys feel about those?
It's hit
Some
and
better than
miss. I
others.
love the Jungle
Yeah.
Book. I love the new Aladdin. But then I think Beauty and the Beast, I didn't hate it at all. I liked it. But it was like there was a deleted song that I wish that they added in there. Like there's a few things that where the animation wasn't perfect. I kind of wish that they maybe changed what could have been changed as opposed to staying fully faithful to that. So kind of hit
Yeah.
and miss, hit and
No,
miss.
they're totally hit and miss.
I mean, something that I think, like, obviously it's not live action, it was, you know, a complete, entirely all animals, but something that I think they did an adaptation of recently that was really interesting was when they did The Lion King. Scar's
Yeah.
character, they added an entirely new level to him, but I was like, I want a movie just about him.
And then they
Like,
announced
there's
Mufasa.
story
And it's
there
like,
that we
what?
never know.
Why is Mufasa?
Yeah.
But then your favorite song from that movie, they just turned into a bit of a poem or a bit of a recital. They didn't sing it.
Come
So
on, hyenas, be prepared. Yeah. It's like, what?
yeah,
Yeah,
it just
that
turned
is
into
the
a
best.
monologue.
I have heard like whisperings like online and in person of like they're maybe gonna make a live action Atlantis, The Lost Empire. And who knows, like I could be totally out of the loop. It could be actually being produced right now. I have no idea. But that is my favorite Disney movie by like a landslide. My dogs, when I was growing up, were named Milo and Kita because like I loved that movie so much. And I think that movie is like ripe for a live action remake. It has an incredibly diverse cast. And it's got a really amazing story. Again, I like that whole kind of like we're going on an adventure like Indiana Jones. I don't know if you guys watch Strange World out on Disney. But that's like a really fun kind of like we're going off on adventure to like strange new worlds. I love that vibe. I think that's always so interesting is like finding a new world under our own or within our own. I think is like a really fascinating theme to play with. So that would be really awesome if that was actually true. I would love to work on that if I could. But yeah, I think that's honestly about it. I'm really interested to see what the MCU is going to be doing in Phase 5, just because I didn't like Phase 4 that much. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I agree. I think the MCU is certainly something that's going to be really interesting. For me, after Endgame, I was thought it was a little bit flat for a while. And I was like, I don't know where they're going to take it from here. I don't know if I'm going to like it particularly.
Yeah.
But it's certainly been interesting.
I wept ugly tears when I watched Endgame. I love that movie though, but I left the theater a mess.
Yeah, I kind of watched Marvel in a really strange order and came in just about like Infinity War time and then went back to see the others. So when I saw Endgame, I'd not even seen them all and I ended up crying in the cinema as well.
Yeah, it was
I
super.
think I did, and I was like following it from
Yeah.
the start. I don't know what's wrong with me. I think I'm broken as well.
I will admit, one of my favourite cinema moments ever was when we went to see the newest Spider-Man, because the UK is so conservative in the cinema. Like, you sit there, you watch it, nobody claps, nobody shouts, nobody screams. You just sit there really quietly, and if you're even heard whispering, the family in front of you all turn around and glare.
Maybe a
Like,
baby cries and gets like escorted out.
Yeah, it's really like an odd experience. But when you went to see the new Spider-Man, it was like nothing we'd seen in UK cinemas before. People were screaming, they were clapping. We've seen clips of people like jumping up out of their chairs. Like, it was like nothing the cinemas here over here had seen before.
That's amazing. I have not seen that one yet. I'm loath to admit. I'm like a little bit behind. See, it's funny because like there are things that I definitely should have seen and definitely should know like all about, and I just like haven't quite gotten there yet.
I think when you want to watch them all in order, and like you say, if you've not enjoyed the most recent phase, it's kind of like I need to get through some stuff to get to that, and like it just kind of puts a block in the way.
Yeah.
But I guess like we were saying, there is some really good things coming up in the future, and I guess kind of just beyond, you know, the projects that you know about coming out and things like that. I mean, for you personally, is there kind of anything writing wise that you're looking to achieve in like the next couple of years or so?
Totally. I'm always trying to push myself, honestly, because writing the way I do it is very solitary, right? I work remotely. My editor contacts me via Slack. I sit alone in a room, you know, all day long. And I think that it would be really wonderful to, I guess, do some like workshopping with people. Like, I guess, get together in person with other writers, like I used to do in college, in class, and like actually workshop things would be really nice. But I'm just trying to, I guess, write for myself is like a priority I want to work on, because I mean, this year for Looper, I wrote more words than there are in Pride and Prejudice.
Oh, wow.
That's a novel. I wrote essentially a novel, and I told myself when I looked at that number, I was like, if you can write this, you could totally write your own book if you wanted to. And so I did NaNoWriMo. Have you guys ever heard of that? What that is? It's like, it's this kind of like contest sort of challenge that people can do in the month of November, where you're supposed to write like around 1,600 words a day, like every day. And then by the end of the month, you have like a treatment for a book. I tried my best to do that this past November. I did not quite get to a full book treatment, but I guess my biggest goal is to just like work on my own writing. I would love to have a book written by the time I'm 30. I'm 25 now, so we'll see where that goes.
That'd be amazing. And I mean, like, if, you know, things like that were to happen, where's the best place for people to be kind of, you know, catching up with the work that you were doing and the writing and everything?
Well, right now I am like totally dedicated to Looper at the moment. So you can just look my name up, Mae Harrington Neill, and Looper will probably be the first thing that comes up. But I actually really want to work on starting my own website, because I don't know. I think that I just want to be able to touch people in a more like in their heart, I guess. Like, I want to be able to see how my writing affects people, because I know people are reading my writing on Looper, but that's not, if it was just Mae, you know, that's probably not how I would write. And I want to see, I guess, if that works for people, because right now I know that the writing I do for Looper is working. But I guess trying to just like explore my own like talent, I guess, is a goal for me.
That is absolutely incredible. Like, it's so interesting how that works out, because when I think about what I'd like to do here, it's almost like the reverse of that. So like we are doing our own thing here, but I'm kind of like, I would love to approach a company or a website and kind of be incorporated within that. So it's definitely interesting, like when you think about different ways to take things. But I guess that's all of the questions that we did have down for you today. I just want to thank you again for coming on and for being so generous with your time, because I will admit, I think maybe in terms of the conversation, I got a bit carried away just because it was so much fun for us personally. So I hope that you have had fun talking with us today. So thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, I had an amazing time. Thank you guys so much for having me on. You guys are doing an amazing job. You guys asked such wonderful questions.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Of course, you do an amazing job as well, and I'll leave kind of the links to the Looper profile in the description as well. And hopefully, going to
Thank
keep
you.
up with it because we kind of find it difficult to stay in the loop in between working and stuff. So it'll be great to kind of be copied in with that. And I guess to wrap things up formally in terms of the episode, thank you so much to everyone for watching this today. It kind of means so much. Like we're on like episode 80 now, and so for like the same faces, same names, and new names as well coming into the scene, it's like I don't think I've stayed with anything for, well, apart from you, Millie, for 80 plus weeks. So thank you so much for that. And if you do want to see more, then please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.